My daughter planned a wedding for 200 guests, but she hid my invitation. Not because I was wrong, not because I was inadequate, but because she was afraid people would see me and think her family wasn't classy enough. The most painful part was not being invited. I realized I had become the embarrassment of the very person I raised, and from the moment she hid that invitation, I also made my own decision. I would show up when everyone believed I should disappear. If you've ever been looked down on, pushed aside, or forced to stay silent just to please someone else, leave me a single dot. So I know there is one more person who understands this pain and is listening to the rest of my story. Thank you for spending your time here. Allow me to tell you my story. The afternoon in Rainier Beach always carries a strange kind of light, a pale gold that slides across the water, weaves through rain-soaked trees, and settles into my small living room like a thin veil of fog. I was sitting in my mini workshop, adjusting an old pair of headphones, the way 30 years of stage sound engineering had trained me to do, sitting at a wooden desk under a warm lamp with something that needed fine-tuning. Then my phone vibrated. The name Helena lit up the screen. For 3 years now, every call from my daughter carried the same mix of feelings: joy, worry, and a distance I couldn't pinpoint the origin of. I picked up. "Dad, are you busy?" Her voice was half a pitch higher than usual, a little shaky, a little rehearsed, the kind of tone people practice in the mirror. I smiled, though no one saw it. "I'm here. What's going on, sweetheart?" A short breath slipped through the speaker. "I'm getting married, Dad. Preston proposed last night." My hands froze. The headphones on the table tilted to one side. Good news. Yes. But in that 1 second silence after her sentence, I heard something others might miss. Calculation, caution, and a barrier I hadn't been able to cross for years. "That's wonderful, Helena," I said softly. "I'm happy for you." I know you would be." Her voice brightened, but not fully naturally. "Preston and I want to meet you. Dinner, talk about the wedding. Harbor Light Bistro, 7 o'clock, okay? Not, would you like to come? Not, are you free?" She didn't ask my preference at all. She just gave me a schedule like I was a line item on her planner. I still nodded, though she couldn't see it. "I'll be there." Harbor Light Bistro sits in Queen Anne, on a corner overlooking Elliott Bay, the kind of place Seattleites take out-of-state guests to impress them. I parked my silver 2004 Ford Ranger, only slightly older than Helena by about 3 years, 2 blocks away. I still chose that truck because, well, not for any deep reason. It runs well, it's durable, and it lets people find nothing remarkable about me. Playing poor wasn't a plan. It simply became reality after my wife passed. I lived quietly. People believed I was modest. I let them believe it. The breeze from the bay chilled the collar of my old flannel. I pulled it close and stepped inside the restaurant. Helena saw me first. She jumped up from her seat, smiling widely, but her eyes flicked instantly toward Preston, as if checking his reaction. That tiny movement I caught immediately. "Dad!" She hugged me, short, light, cautious. Then she noticed the flannel jacket. A flash of awkwardness crossed her face, like the shadow of a bird over water. Quick, but impossible to hide. Preston Vale rose from his leather chair. Navy suit, Breitling watch, posture of someone accustomed to being under a business spotlight. His gaze scanned me from head to toe, fast as scanning a QR code, before he smiled politely. "Mr. Aldridge, a pleasure." He extended his hand. Firm, professional, calculated. I didn't hate men like him. I'd worked with them my whole life. I just knew one thing. They always evaluate. Always. We sat down. Helena leaned slightly toward Preston, an unconscious tilt. I recognized it instantly. She was aligning herself with him, letting him set the tone of everything. Dinner moved with standard small talk. "You're still fixing headphones in the garage?" Helena asked, her voice tinged with embarrassment. "Yeah, still doing it to keep my hands busy." I caught Preston's glance. polite, but I could almost hear the checkmark in his mind. Old job, low income, matches the Ford. He cut his salmon with a silver knife, clean, rhythmic motions. We're planning a pretty special ceremony. The word special was pressed ever so slightly. Silver Crest Pavilion, on Bainbridge Island. Very upscale. I knew the place, knew it intimately, but I didn't say a word. Helena's smile grew wider, eyes bright with a forced gleam. I want you to see it, Dad. It's really beautiful. I'm sure it is, I replied. The server poured wine. Preston leaned back, lifting his glass, speaking as if filling space in the conversation. Elite weddings require elite guests. The sentence was light as air, but it landed on the table like a pin. Helena stiffened. I saw it clearly. And me? I set my water glass down, lifted my head, and gave Preston a very short, very calm look. Is that so? Preston didn't notice my tone had shifted. Helena did, but said nothing. She only tightened her grip on her purse strap and stared out the window at Elliott Bay, darkening like a stage curtain. Seattle night fell like theater lighting, and in that moment I knew. This wasn't just a wedding. This was a test of character, one my daughter didn't even realize she was taking. And I understood something else. I wasn't stepping off this stage anytime soon. Harbor Light Bistro at night looks beautiful like a stage, but at noon the next day, when we met again to discuss things in more detail, it was too bright, exposing every angle and every expression people usually want to hide. Sunlight from Elliott Bay streamed through the windows, making every glass and plate flash as if judging who was sincere and who was pretending. I arrived in my 2004 Ranger, still carrying the scent of wood and machine oil. After parking, I straightened my flannel, pulled my shoulders back a little, and walked in. Helena and Preston were already seated, the typical posture of people accustomed to controlling both time and image. Helena saw me and smiled, a polite smile, just enough for outsiders to believe father and daughter were fine. But I noticed instantly, her eyes weren't warm the way they used to be back when Barbara was still here. She looked at me as if she were measuring whether I fit into the world she was trying to enter. Preston didn't bother hiding that thought. He stood, adjusted his cuff, his voice smooth as silk but cold as steel. Good afternoon, Mr. Aldridge. I nodded. Just call me Mason. He smiled, the smile of a man greeting a client, not his future father-in-law. We sat. The server brought water. Helena sat with her leg touching Preston's, her body angled slightly toward him. I had noticed this shift the night before, an unconscious alignment she kept adjusting to match the life she wanted. Preston glanced at the menu, set it down, and launched into a career introduction without anyone asking. Skyvale Aviation is expanding its charter routes from Seattle to Napa. Most of my clients are high-net individuals. Very busy schedule. He looked at Helena and gave her a cool smile. Good thing Helena can keep up with this lifestyle. I simply smiled and let him talk. Men's boasting isn't new, but men who use boasting to diminish others, those are the ones I watch, Helena added, her tone carrying a faint, proud edge. Preston has a lot of VIP clients. Our wedding has to match that, so he won't be judged. Ah, I understood. That sentence wasn't for me. It was for Preston. My daughter was trying to prove she was worthy. Then she shifted to the venue. Dad, you know Silver Crest Pavilion, right? On Bainbridge Island. Beautiful, fancy, very high class. I looked at her, slowly. The memory of that first Bainbridge evening, the grand opening, and Barbara standing beside me as we finalized the sound design system for that very pavilion, drifted through my mind. I knew that place, knew it deeply, but chose silence. I've heard of it, I said quietly. Preston lifted his wine and rotated it gently. We've reserved a date. But for a venue like this, payments are split into 3 phases. The first deposit is coming up. Helena shot him a glance, clearly rehearsed. She placed her hand on the table, voice softened. Like she practiced. Dad, I know weddings are expensive. I don't expect you to cover everything. Just, if you could help a little for Mom. The words for Mom hit the softest part of me. Barbara always wanted to see this day, but Helena was using her mother's memory as leverage. That chilled me. How much? I asked plainly, because the number wasn't the issue. Her tone was. Helena swallowed. Around $45,000. The first deposit, the florist, the band. We'll handle the next phases, Preston added in a tone meant to soothe an elderly man. We know you're retired. Just do what you can. Soft words, heavy with pity. I saw Helena watching me, not worried I'd be hurt, but worried I wouldn't meet the standard they'd set. I took a sip of water and said, I'll take care of it. Helena lit up too quickly, too brightly, and a part of me hurt, realizing her joy was tied tightly to the money her father could give. The meal continued with small talk, but the atmosphere had shifted completely. Helena was polite. Preston was polished. And me? I was being placed neatly into the box they preferred. The old father, touched, gentle, contributing what he could, and standing outside their world. When the bill arrived, Preston pressed his lips together slightly, preparing to follow the expected gentleman routine. But I stopped the server's hand. I'll pay. Preston paused, just slightly, but I caught it. His eyes flickered with surprise, the look of someone who hadn't expected a poor flannel old man to cover lunch in Queen Anne. Mr. Aldridge, really? I told you, just call me Mason. I handed over my card. The server nodded and left. A brief silence. Helena looked at Preston, slightly surprised. Preston looked at me, re-evaluating. I stood and put on my jacket. Thank you both for the meal, I said. See you soon. I walked away, feeling both of their eyes on my back, a look containing 3 layers: doubt, quiet judgment, and a hint of impatience. As I stepped out of the restaurant, the cold breeze from Elliott Bay brushed my neck. I pulled my collar up, not because of the cold, but because the truth had finally shown itself clearly. My daughter was living according to Preston's image, and he saw me as something old and outdated that Helena hadn't discarded yet. But I wasn't angry, not wounded. I simply thought, one day they will learn who I truly am. The Seattle morning was foggy, and the road leading into Rainier Beach looked as if someone had quietly washed it moments ago. I had just brewed coffee and was leaning against the window frame, watching water streaks still clinging to the wooden fence when the soft sound of brakes came from the gate. Helena. Her glossy white sedan reflected the whole gray sky. She sat inside for a few more seconds, as if reminding herself of something, because lately, before every visit, she always needed to prepare herself. I opened the door before she could knock. Come in, sweetheart. Helena stepped inside, and her eyes instantly swept over my living room. Every detail, every object. I saw the silent evaluation clearly. The old sofa is not torn. The small 32-inch TV was outdated but still clear. The tidy but simple kitchen, a single-burner stovetop, an old pot hanging beside it. The wooden floors used every day. Not bad, but simple indeed, and more importantly, enough to confirm everything Helena had built in her mind. She smiled, a smile full of pity. Dad, you keep the house clean, but... She looked around again. Living like this has really been emotional. That wasn't a direct insult, but it was a thin blade sliding across a father's pride. I just shrugged. I'm used to it. Helena sat down, holding her leather purse on her lap, as if afraid it would touch the sofa. I can't stay long. I have to go to Bainbridge to meet the wedding planner. Okay, I said. I understand. A few minutes passed before she straightened her back, hands clasped, her signal that she was about to get to the point. Dad, I know yesterday was a bit fast, but to keep the wedding on schedule, we need a clearer timeline for the payments. I smiled lightly. When do you need me to contribute? She looked down, opened her phone, and read from her planner app. The first deposit is due in 5 days. The florist is next week. the band before the end of the month. I took my notebook from the drawer, opened to a new page, and wrote, Deposit 1, 5 days. Florist, next week. Band, end of the month. Helena watched every stroke of my pen as if she were watching my bank account empty. Dad, are you sure you're okay? I mean, 45,000 isn't small. I looked at her 1 second longer than usual. I can handle it. She nodded, but it was a doubtful nod. The kind of nod that comes with the thought, my dad must be scraping together every last bit of savings. She stood up. I have to go. Thank you. So much. I know Mom would want this wedding to be perfect. I opened the door for her. Helena stepped down the porch steps but didn't get into the car immediately. She looked around my yard, the old wooden fence, the homegrown plants, the slightly tilted mailbox, and sighed softly. Don't stress too much, Dad. She said it the way someone speaks to a weak person. I just smiled. Helena got in the car. I stood at the door, listening out of lifelong habit from working in sound engineering. As soon as the engine started, I heard her tapping on her phone. Then her voice came through, clear as if she were standing right beside me. He'll pay the whole 45,000. I guess that's all he has. I closed my eyes for 1 second, not because of the money, not because of the financial judgment, but because of the wrong belief my daughter carried, the belief she created herself, fed by her father's modest exterior and Preston's polished surface. Helena drove off, the white car, disappeared over the hill, leaving only a faint smell of gasoline mixed with Seattle's damp air. I went inside and closed the door. No lights, no more coffee. I pulled open the wooden drawer beside my desk. Inside was a black folder with no label, no name, only a thin silver line across it, the only sign of a part of my life neither Helena nor Preston knew. I opened it. Rows of neatly arranged financial documents, shares of Sky Acoustic Systems, concert touring audio system royalties, real estate investments in Bellevue, and an account at Fidelis Private Banking. I pressed total, $210 million. The number appeared clearly on the screen, the blue light reflecting off the old wooden desk. I smiled softly. Not a triumphant smile, not a revenge smile, but the smile of a man who understood. The play they were staging was heading in the wrong direction, and the bride's father would be the one adjusting the lights. The Saturday afternoon sun broke unexpectedly over Seattle after a string of rainy days, and all of Rainier Beach smelled of damp wood and freshly awakened grass. I was about to get the mail as usual, with a cup of coffee in hand, expecting nothing more than a few ads and the electric bill, when I stepped onto the sidewalk and saw 3 neighbors gathered around the shared mailbox, chatting excitedly. And what caught my eye, each of them was holding either a cream-colored envelope or a phone displaying a wedding invitation. A light breeze fluttered the corners of the paper, and the sunlight on their faces looked like it was shining on something worth being proud of. One of them, Mrs. Wilson from next door, saw me and waved, "Mason, have you gotten your invitation yet? It's beautiful." I walked over. "What invitation, ma'am?" She laughed as if she couldn't believe I was asking seriously. "Oh, come on, Helena's wedding invitation. Your daughter. That Preston guy. Everyone's saying it's the biggest event of the year in Bainbridge." Another neighbor held his phone out proudly. "Look, Mason, here. The kids sent an electronic version too, with a QR check-in. Pretty modern." The screen lit up in his hand. Pale gold calligraphy, a deep blue background, and the familiar logo, a silver curve embracing the glass building on a cliff. Silver Crest Pavilion. For a moment, all the sounds around us went silent. I stared at that logo, and instantly my mind replayed a scene from 15 years ago. Barbara standing beside me in her deep blue dress, the bay wind lifting her hair, me adjusting the final settings on the sound system before opening night, and to my right, Olivia Trent, back then just an assistant, running between the ballroom and the outdoor terrace with a checklist in hand. Silver Crest Pavilion wasn't just a venue. It had once been the heart of my career. I was one of the 3 founding shareholders. I designed the entire outdoor performance audio system, selected the materials for the acoustic walls, and spent 2 straight nights in the control room fine-tuning the reverb to exactly what Barbara wanted. But when Barbara passed away, I stepped out of the board, gave up all public acknowledgement, kept only silent shares, and a trust account. From that day on, no one connected my name to the pavilion, and I kept it that way. Yet now, my own daughter chose that place for her wedding, and cut me out of the picture. "Beautiful, isn't it, Mason?" Mr. Davis grinned. "Very classy." I nodded lightly. "Yes, it's beautiful." I handed the invitation back, offered a few polite words, and walked home. But as I approached my mailbox, I already knew what I would find. And I was right. Empty. A plumbing flyer, a bill, nothing else. No invitation, no cream envelope, no email, nothing. 3 days in a row. Every morning I walked past the mailbox. Every afternoon I checked my email app. Every evening I sat by the window watching the streetlights flicker on and then dim, but still no invitation. On the 4th day I called Helena. She picked up quickly. "Dad, everything okay?" "I want to ask, has the wedding invitation been sent?" I heard paper rustling behind her and someone, likely Preston, whispering something to her. "Oh, the invitation. The printer had a delay. We're sending them in 3 batches. The neighbors probably got the first batch. You're in the next one. Don't worry, it's coming." Her voice was light but weightless. A sentence straight from a script. Polite, functional, and completely devoid of warmth. "All right," I said. "I'll wait." Helena quickly added, "Don't overthink it, Dad. Weddings are busy. I'll bring it to you myself if needed." "No need," I replied, my tone soft but sharper. "I can wait." We exchanged a few more polite lines, then hung up. I stood in front of my living room window for a long, long time. Seattle was about to rain again, the thin afternoon sunlight slipping off the window frame like the last sheet of the day, reflecting on something in my hand. Not a printed card, but the image of the invitation reproduced perfectly in my memory. The silver curved logo, the calligraphy Helena picked. I looked at that space, my fingertip tracing the edge of the table as if tracing the pavilion. Logo I was remembering. The logo of something I had bled for. The logo of my life's work. The logo my daughter sent to the neighbors before she sent it to her own father, if she ever intended to send it at all. I stood still for a moment, then sat down, holding nothing but the memory that had surfaced, and switched on the light. The warm glow spread across the glass surface, like a simple signal, but strong enough. All right, if they want a story without the father, then the father will step onto the stage himself, at the right moment, under the right light, and no one will forget it. That night, Seattle had a light rain, the kind that wasn't heavy, enough to soak a jacket, but lingered just long enough to make a person feel cold from the inside. I was sitting in my small workshop, the warm lamp casting light over the coils of audio cables hanging on the wall. The room was so quiet I could hear the wall clock ticking 1 second at a time, as if counting down to something I didn't yet know. My phone vibrated. Helena. Her name lit up in the dark, like a sign I could no longer avoid. I reached for the phone. "Dad, are you free?" Her voice was lower than usual, not crying, but tense, like a guitar string tightened 1 turn too far. "I'm here," I said. There was no immediate response, only a faint breath, and another sound, very soft, but I heard it, a man's whisper behind her. "Preston." I waited. 5 seconds, 8 seconds, 10 seconds. "Helena," I said. "Are you there?" She took a long breath. "Dad, I want to talk about the wedding." "I want to ask you one thing," I said directly. "Am I invited?" This time the silence grew thicker. I clearly heard Preston leaning in. "Say it gently." Then Helena spoke. Her voice shook, just slightly, like she had rehearsed, but still couldn't get it out cleanly. Dad, it's better if you skip it. I stayed still. Rain hit the roof, each drop like a knock against my chest. Helena continued, her voice small, as if asking permission from someone standing behind her. It's an elite event. You won't fit. It's image sensitive. I heard each word fall, each one like a needle. Not because of the meaning, but because of the way she said it, as if explaining why a stranger should be excluded, not her own father. I could picture it clearly. Helena holding the phone, Preston behind her, his hand on her shoulder, guiding each phrase, each line. Not because they hated me, but because they feared I didn't match their image, feared the 2004 Ranger, feared the old flannel, feared I would cheapen the wedding, feared I would embarrass them in front of their crowd. I looked down at my hands, these fingers that once brought the pavilion's sound system to life on opening night, that once held Barbara's hand in her final moment, that built countless grand stages. And now, to my daughter, those hands were a liability. Dad, Helena tried again, I don't want to hurt you. However, this wedding comes with a lot of pressure. Optics matter. Optics. Image. Things that had never been worth more than the person behind them. I went quiet for a moment, not because I was hurt, but because I had my answer. Whole. Clear. Without excuses. I understand, I said softly, each word cold as the bay water on a winter night. Dad, she exhaled. I'm sorry. No need, I replied. Thank you. For what? I looked out the window. The rain blurred the streetlights, stretching them into soft streaks, like long ribbons across a stage. Thank you. I finally heard the truth. I heard Helena break down. Preston said something, but I no longer cared. I ended the call, no anger, just a door closing quietly, and behind it, the darkness of what they believed about me. I set the phone on my workbench among the old audio tools. Then I blew out the lamp, leaving the workshop in the gray of a Seattle rainy night. If they think a poor old man isn't worthy of stepping into their world, then fine. They have never stepped into my real world. That night, Seattle was wrapped in a thick kind of silence, the kind that only arrives after you hear a sentence that makes your whole chest tighten. Helena wanted me to stay away from her own wedding. Preston whispered instructions to her like I was some kind of PR liability. To them, all they saw was an old flannel shirt, a faded 2004 Ford Ranger, and a modest Rainier Beach home I deliberately kept simple. Neither of them saw the man who laid the first building blocks of his own career. Fine. If all they saw were darkness, then I would turn on the light. I opened my laptop in the audio workshop, where Barbara once sat sipping tea, where I used to adjust every decibel until the echo hit exactly the emotion I wanted. I logged into Fidelis Private Banking. The facial recognition scan passed through the dim yellow light. Then the words, "Access granted," appeared. The screen opened into a world Helena had never seen. The investment fund Barbara left behind, Sky Acoustic System shares, the royalties from international touring shows where I once stood beneath the stage. My hands buried in the console like a silent conductor. All of it combined, $210 million, a number as quiet as a flat ocean, yet heavy enough to sink every illusion Preston believed he controlled. I leaned back, not happy, not angry, just returning to an old position, the position I stepped away from 3 years after Barbara died, to see who cared for me and who only cared for my wallet. The next morning I met attorney Eleanor Crest. She looked at me the way someone looks at a man who has finally crossed from patience into clarity. "What are you planning to do at the pavilion?" she asked. "Show up." "How exactly?" "In a way they'll remember for the rest of their lives." Eleanor nodded, then pulled up the wedding contract, marking every clause they might try to use against me. Her conclusion, "You're not sabotaging anything. You're simply going somewhere you have a right to be. Silvercrest includes your shares. They can't bar you." Then she added something critical. "Do not, under any circumstances, Book a Skyvale helicopter. The moment your name hits their system, Preston will find out. Of course, Preston Vale was the kind of man obsessed with control. I wasn't giving him that satisfaction. By noon, I stood at Skylift Seattle's helipad, the wind from Lake Union flipping my collar. No one here knew who I was, and it didn't matter. I rented a Bell 407, one of the most stable, smooth helicopters, with the cleanest sound profile, fitting for a man like me who lived his entire life by his ears. "What date? What time?" the manager asked. "Sunday. Bainbridge Landing. Pavilion coordinates." He nodded, checked the license, and asked nothing more. Good. I liked people who didn't waste words. The next step, Silver Crest Pavilion. I called Olivia Trent, the manager. When I walked into the pavilion's curved glass lobby, she looked at me for a long moment, the look of someone digging through old memories. "You used to work here, didn't you?" I handed her my old internal ID, the original pavilion employee badge, then a partial document showing my shareholder status, just enough for her to understand, but not enough to reveal everything. Olivia went silent for a few seconds. "You're the one who designed the acoustic hall system, sound room number 3. I nodded. "Me. What do you need from me?" I spoke plainly, each item placed like a note in the right measure. 1. Clear the helipad for the Bell 407 under OSHA standards. 2. Set up a spotlight from the west terrace. Beam aimed directly at the ballroom doors when I enter. 3. Temporarily remove the founder portraits from the first floor hallway so Helena doesn't discover the truth too early. Olivia thought for 10 seconds. Event managers calculate timelines automatically. Then she nodded. "I'll clear the helipad. Spotlight goes to the tech crew. Founder photos will be logged as frame maintenance." "Good." Olivia tilted her head. "Mason, are you trying to ruin your daughter's wedding?" "No." I stood straight, hand resting on the glass railing. "I just want them to know who the bride's father is. The rest, they can choose." That night, I opened the old leather notebook, where Barbara used to write song lyrics. I wrote at the top of a new page, "Saturday entrance protocol, Bell 407, 4:10 p.m. departure. Bainbridge helipad, 4:28 p.m. landing. Westgate spotlight, active, ballroom entrance. Slow, deliberate, no disruption, no arguing, no noise. Let the truth raise its own volume." I closed the notebook. In the glass window, the reflection showed a man Helena had forgotten. The man who once engineered sound for an entire city. The man who stood behind the lights. This time, I wouldn't be behind anything. I would walk in. And when the spotlight came on, no one inside Silvercrest Pavilion would ever forget that moment. The night before the wedding, Bainbridge Island was covered in fog like a natural backdrop for a performance I would no longer be standing behind the curtains for. Silvercrest Pavilion glowed under test lights, and Olivia Trent stood in the lobby with her clipboard, looking like a director holding the entire breathing rhythm of the stage. "Dim the system. 40%. Keep the west side spotlight on the founder's wall," she ordered. A young technician with dyed green hair laughed. "Tomorrow there will be influencers. Someone's definitely going to live stream the whole thing." I said nothing, but in my mind I already heard the click of destiny. Light, cameras, truth. Olivia stepped closer to me. "Everything is exactly as you requested. But you do realize the spotlight hitting the wall without the founder photos will make guests curious, right?" I looked straight at her. Curiosity prepares them to receive the truth. The tech crew shifted lights, tested the spotlight, adjusted levels. It all felt like set-up day before a major concert, except this time I would be the one stepping into the light. Afterward, I returned to my faded 2004 Ford Ranger. Inside the truck was a black box that had been locked for years. I opened it. The charcoal Tom Ford suit Barbara once chose for me, and the silver Celtic-style cufflinks, the last gift she gave me before her illness worsened. I held them under the parking lot light, the metal reflecting like a piece of memory that had never faded. I whispered, "Tomorrow. I am not going there to be anyone's backdrop." I put the suit and cufflinks back into the box and hid it under the seat, keeping the image of the poor father intact until the very last second. To make the truth shine, sometimes you must begin in the dark. Late at night, I sat in my Rainier Beach audio workshop, where Barbara once drank tea and watched me fine-tune decibels until perfection. I opened a cabinet, took out an old USB, and played the video of her during her final days in the hospital. Barbara was thin, her hair fragile, but her eyes still bright. "Mason, if someday she gets married, promise me you'll walk her down the aisle, so she knows she's not stepping into life alone." I had promised her, but Helena had never seen this video. I stared at Barbara's face, my chest tightening. Tomorrow she gets married, but she doesn't want me to walk her down the aisle. Outside, the wind tapped softly against the window. "I'll still go," I said, my voice low. Not so she can lean on me, but so she can understand. I turned off the video, closed the laptop, and stood up. The spotlight was ready. The helipad was ready. The ballroom was ready. And somewhere among tomorrow's guests, a live stream camera would also be ready. I wasn't creating a viral moment. I was simply putting the light in the right place. The rest, the truth would write on its own. That afternoon on Bainbridge Island was beautiful to the point of cruelty. Golden sunlight filtered through the Douglas firs. The sea breeze carried salt and the sound of soft waves. A perfect afternoon for a wedding. Perfect, if the bride's father were allowed to be there. At 4:08 p.m., the Bell 407 lifted off from South Lake Union, its engine smooth like an opening score. The pilot asked, "Want to loop once before landing?" I said, "Of course. Give them time to look up." The helicopter circled the bay and moved toward Silver Crest Pavilion. From above, the entire wedding lawn glowed like a stage waiting for its lead. When the Bell 407 was still 500 feet out, I could see tablecloths fluttering, violins tuning, guests holding rosé, and more than 20 people live streaming. In a single beat, every gaze turned skyward. "OMG, there's a helicopter!" Is that part of the wedding? Someone's recording this. Live streams went live at once. Cameras pointed at the blue sky. I adjusted my Tom Ford collar, touched the silver cufflinks catching the sunlight, the light sharp like a blade. Barbara once said, "Mason, the light always finds the right person. You just have to step in." The Bell 407 descended, rotor wind flipping table runners, sending a few hairpieces flying, young guests shrieking as if it were a planned performance. The pilot said, "They're looking at you." I answered, "Good, let them remember." At 4:30 p.m., the Bell 407 touched the pavilion helipad. The rotor still spun, but its sound softened. I opened the door and stepped out, leather shoes hitting the ground, wind pushing my silver hair aside, cufflinks flashing a cold stripe of light. 200 guests fell silent as if someone had cut their audio. Only the fading rotor hum remained. Whispers rose. "Is that the father? Did he rent that? Who is he?" Then I saw Helena, white wedding dress, trembling hands, wide eyes, her face pale like she'd seen a ghost. Preston stood beside her, jaw locked, leaning toward her, and I read his lips clearly. "Did your dad rent that?" Helena didn't answer. She only stared at me as if asking, "Who is he?" I walked forward, back straight, absolute silence. Phones lifted higher, whispers tightened. Someone filmed. Someone gasped. Someone scoffed as if I had rented a helicopter to show off. But I heard nothing, saw nothing. Silence was the loudest sound I had. I walked straight to the pavilion doors. When I reached them, they opened. Olivia Trent stood there, posture firm, eyes respectful. She bowed her head slightly and said in a low but steady voice, "They're ready inside, Mr. Aldridge." The spotlight reflected on my face, not her spotlight, But the collective gaze of 200 people who had just realized the bride's father was not poor at all. I stepped inside, and behind me the crowd erupted. But I did not turn back, because the biggest wave was still waiting inside. The ballroom doors closed behind me, and in the first 5 seconds, I knew everything was exactly where it needed to be. Dim lights, the hush of 200 people breathing the same stunned air. Every gaze locked on me. Olivia stood by the control panel, her hand waiting for my signal. I nodded. The entire ballroom went dark, a soft boom that still made several guests gasp. Then a single beam ignited, a spotlight cutting straight across the room onto the founder's wall, and the massive photograph appeared. Barbara, 15 years ago, on the grand opening day of Silvercrest Pavilion. Barbara in her ocean blue dress, smiling like sunlight. I was beside her, still holding the red ribbon-cutting scissors. Beneath it, Silvercrest Pavilion, founded by Mason and Barbara Aldridge. The packed room constricted as if someone had squeezed the air out of it. Guests whispered, "No way. He's the founder? Google him right now." And dozens of phone screens lit up at once. Mason Aldridge, founder of Pavilion Group, stage sound architect, net worth in the hundreds of millions, silent shareholder after his wife's passing. I stepped into the center of the spotlight and spoke each word clearly. "Good evening, everyone. My name is Mason Aldridge, and I own this place." A shockwave rolled across the room. Helena stood near the stage, pale, trembling, lipstick smudged from pressing her hand to her mouth. Preston forced a smile, stepped forward, and extended his hand. "Mr. Aldridge, what a wonderful surprise." But I looked at his hand and did not take it. The whispers shifted to outrage on my behalf. Someone shouted, "The live stream just hit 3,200 viewers." I didn't look back. Everything was unfolding exactly in the rhythm of light I had set. I took a USB from my jacket and handed it to Olivia. She killed the old spotlight and brought up a new one on the main screen. Then the video began. Barbara in the hospital, her hair thin, her eyes bright, her voice weak but steady. Mason, "When our girl gets married, be there. Let her know she never steps into life alone." The ballroom collapsed into absolute silence. Helena sank into a chair, tears pouring uncontrollably, her wedding dress crumpling under her hands. She choked out, "Mom! Oh my God! Mom!" Preston stood frozen, his face drained, realizing the entire image of power he had built was collapsing in front of thousands watching the live stream. I looked up at Barbara on the screen, the only person who ever truly knew who I was. And when the video ended, I spoke one final line, calm as a clean, perfect cut. "Barbara wanted me here, and I came. I have always been here, even when my daughter forgot." Helena broke into sobs, not the cry of a bride, but the cry of a child realizing she had lost sight of the most important thing in her life. People say accidents happen in a second, but a reputation collapses even faster. The next morning, Seattle drizzled softly as I drank my coffee in Rainier Beach, and a barrage of messages hit my phone like war drums. Skyvale Aviation issued an internal statement announcing that Preston Vale was suspended for ethical misconduct related to disrespecting the owner of a venue their VIP client was renting. The VIP had filed a complaint. An employee sent the notice to Olivia. She forwarded it to me and said the executive floor was in chaos. I just sipped my coffee. Optics have consequences. Helena received an email from her marketing firm. She was required to explain herself within 2 days and was placed under a 1-month performance and conduct review. Not fired, industry typical. One coworker said Helena showed up looking like she had cried all night, and no one on the entire floor dared speak to her. On Reddit, a post exploded, "Bride band's father from his own venue." More than 4,000 comments. This is a Netflix movie. Dad walked in like a CEO and the groom looked like an intern. Does anyone have the spotlight link? No one knew I was reading every line. Pavilion Group sent an internal email thanking me for bringing the brand back to its roots. I stared at that sentence for a long time. 3 years away from everything, 3 years testing who was real, and in a single afternoon, the light I stepped into pulled the brand back into the founder's hands. Preston kept receiving bad news from Sky Vale. His suspension could turn into probation, and the VIP client demanded he not work with them for half a year. A pilot whispered to Olivia. Preston punched a wall in the conference room. He yelled, "I'm not losing to some old man driving a Ford Ranger." A sentence worthy of being carved in stone. Helena called me more than a dozen times. I didn't pick up. Her voicemail trembled. "Dad, everything's falling apart. Preston got suspended. I'm under review. I don't know what to do." That was no longer the voice of the icy bride from yesterday, but the voice of someone watching. A world built on illusion burn away layer by layer. I still didn't respond. Lessons have to hurt. Olivia texted that the videos from yesterday had passed more than 1 million views. Not one angle, but dozens. The helicopter circling, me stepping out, Preston offering his hand, and me standing still, the spotlight revealing the founder's photo, Barbara's video, Helena collapsing into her chair, the influencer screaming, "Oh my God, the dad owns the place." Each video was a slice of truth. It wasn't me that went viral. The truth did. In just one day, Preston suspended and facing investors, Helena under review, co-workers avoiding her, social media flipping sides, Pavilion Group thanking me, and me, silent, not answering the phone. This wasn't revenge. This was a law of nature. When you build your life on an illusion, one well-placed spotlight is enough to turn it into dust. And I was simply the one who flipped the switch. Summer in Seattle arrived as softly as a breath, quiet, unrushed, but warm enough to make you realize you've stepped into a new chapter. 6 months had passed since that afternoon when Helena knelt at my doorstep. 6 months not long, but long enough for a person to begin again. One Thursday morning, I stopped by the Barbara Aldridge Community Center, the place Barbara and I once dreamed of turning into a music class for underprivileged kids. And I saw Helena. No silk dress, no makeup, no designer shoes, just a t-shirt and a high ponytail, teaching a 9-year-old girl how to hold a microphone. When she turned around, her eyes, for the first time in years, held no forced gentleness meant to keep her father reassured, no proud shine meant to keep her husband confident. They were the eyes of someone who had finally found herself again. "Dad," she said, "we finished 6 months, but I think I'll stay longer." I nodded. No more words needed. That afternoon, Preston met me in a temporary office. No more man-of-the-sky arrogance. He placed a Pavilion operations file on the table. "I don't want to go back to Sky Vale. I want to build something real." I looked at him. He didn't look away. I said, "I have a position, operational analyst, $95,000 a year, no privileges." He answered, "I accept," and the way he said "I" instead of Mr. Aldridge said everything. Helena and Preston moved into a small Beacon Hill apartment. No luxury cars, no penthouse, no Instagram life. Just 2 young people relearning how to live honestly. On the weekend, I attended a fundraiser for Barbara's Center. Candlelight flickered, soft acoustic music played, nothing extravagant. Helena stood far away, didn't call me, just watched. When I stepped onto the stage and spoke about Barbara, her eyes softened as if understanding for the first time what she once overlooked. I spoke slowly. "I raised you, not with money, but with truth." Helena covered her mouth, tears falling, not from guilt this time, but pride. That night, back home, I stood before Barbara's photo, Seattle's breeze pushing the curtains gently. I said, "You see, Barb, I kept my promise. Not the promise to walk her down the aisle, but the promise to teach her how to look straight into the truth." I blew out the candle. And in that silence, I understood. Forgiveness isn't forgetting. Forgiveness is rebuilding from the roots. And this time, the roots are strong enough to stand. There's one thing I learned after everything that happened. Justice isn't something you shout in a crowd. It's something you hold quietly in your heart and reveal through actions that cannot be denied. I have walked through a season of hurt, a season of truth, and a season of forgiveness. And if you've come with me all the way to the end of this story, I believe you understand that feeling better than anyone. If at any moment a sentence, a look, or a scene made you stop, if you've ever felt belittled, excluded, or had to stand up again after something in your life collapsed, leave me a single, so I'll know that out there are people like me, like you, who are quietly finding their way through family wounds. And if you want to continue walking with me into the next stories, journeys of justice, awakening, and the fathers, mothers, and children fighting to reclaim respect and dignity, subscribe, turn on the bell, and tell me where you're listening from. Thank you, truly, for staying until the very end. We will meet again in the stories where light always finds a way through the cracks we once thought could never be repaired.